It is, bro. Hey, your smile's looking good, bro. Those braces are working,
It's
dude.
kind of
I
crazy,
love
huh?
it. It is, dude. I love it. So I just got back from EXPCon, right? And sat in on some really powerful, not only keynotes from some powerful speakers, also some really in depth, high level masterminds around team building, around attraction. And what I thought was really interesting, Jose, is that the company did a survey, right? Access to almost 90,000 agents now. And they asked agents, what do they want to know about? And what was really interesting, Jose, is that individual agents and teams responded the exact same way. What they said they wanted to know about was social media, listing property, so lead gen, lead conversion, and attraction. And the individual agent said that, and the team said that. So as I sat down today and I'm like, well, or yesterday when I sent the text to the team, like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, well, let's talk about what people want to know about, which are the best sources for listings. Now, one of the things I took away from the keynote that Leo gave, which is the CEO of EXP, great leader, a really smart dude, is he looked at some stats, and the stats were pretty eye-opening. The first one is that we've actually had less transactions, on track to have the least amount of transaction that we've had in the last 15 years. It's actually lower than 2008, Jose. So we are in a real estate units recession. Isn't that an interesting observation?
Well, it's funny because I realized this like 2 years ago, and or not 2 years ago, last year. And the reason is that, and this is the reason why a lot of agents are like struggling. And the reason they're struggling is because if they're doing the same things that they were doing when there was 9,000
Mhm.
sales in Ventura County, and right now there's 5,500 sales in Ventura County, it's not going to work. But it's funny. I look back to 2008, 9, 10 in my market, there was somewhere around 7 to 8,000 sales a year. Right now, 5,500 sales or less. So even in the worst real estate crash, there was more sales and less agents at that time.
Which is, I really don't think, Jose, that the real estate agent community is aware of that. That this is actually the lowest amount of transactions that we've had in the last 15 years, and it's less than 2008. I think if you were to ask them, which is a better time to sell real estate, 2008, 2024, they'd be like, oh, 2024 is better. No, it's actually less units. And I've been on
And more
conversations
agents.
and way more agents. So you have more people competing for less opportunities. And I've been on calls with agents, Jose, 2 to 3 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Bro, there's tears. There's, I don't know if I'm going to continue to keep doing this. There's like, maybe I should reconsider and go back and get a job. And what I shared with one of them, I think we can share here, and then we can get into, hey, where are the actual listings? Where should I be looking? Because to your point, I feel like the vast majority of agents are doing the same thing and expecting a different result, even though the context of the marketplace has changed dramatically. Based on what you shared in your market, it's 50% less volume, almost like 45%
Then
less transactions.
supposedly the worst time to sell real estate, when all of the agents were exiting the business because it was the worst time. Right now, there is so many less sales than there was at that time.
Right. And what Thomas said here, which I think is true, he said more agent here, I'll put it up on the screen. More agents, less inventory, time to up the game and be the best of the best. Yeah. So what does that look like? So I was on a call recently with a young man who he got married not that long ago. And he was sharing with me, like, look, dude, this is a challenge. You know what I mean? Like, I have a couple months left before I have to like go get a job, right? And I'm like, all right, well, let me ask you a few questions. I started asking him about where he's spending money. And what came to the surface is he likes to go out, go out to bars and like have a good time, right? And I said, all right, well, let me ask you a question. Are you optimizing for fun or are you optimizing for production? He said, candidly, I'm optimizing for fun. And I was like, okay, well, that's number one, because you initiated this call imagining that I was going to give you some magical concoction, when in fact, what you're optimizing for, what you value at the moment, and the choices that you're making are the actual thorn in your flesh, not kind of sequentially what you should be doing. I also asked him, hey, are you making calls on Saturday? He said, no. Well, let me ask you a question. In an environment where we have the least amount of transactions we've had in the last 15 years, less than 2008, does that seem like a realistic expectation that you could not do that and still hit the goals that you want? And he was like, no. I said, are you doing anything maybe one day a week during the week in the evening from maybe like, I don't know, 5:30 to 8? No. Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Does that seem like a realistic expectation that you can put forth that level of effort in an environment where we have a recession of transactions and still produce favorable outcomes? And the answer was no. So I think part of this, and I'm curious to see what you think, part of this is understanding what we're in. And what we're really in is a very powerful winter, like a blizzard.
In the worst blizzard in the last 15 years.
That's right. And I think that informs mindset and approach, right? That informs like, hey, I'm watching you, Jose, like you are dialed in, bro. You're like, we had a call maybe 90 days ago. You're like, look, dude, fourth quarter, I'm only taking one trip. I know how long it is for. I know what it's for. I'm going to be there. But in order to make up for that one trip, I sat down with Mariella. I'm like, yo, I'm going to have to prospect on Saturdays. I'm going to be prospecting. Like, bro, you know what's required.
I'll tell you this. I've taken one Saturday off this entire year that has not been like I'm attending an event or something like a mastermind or something, but one Saturday I've taken off basically this entire year. I have prospected every single evening, Monday through Friday, bro. Yet I am on pace to do the same amount of production this year that we did in 2021.
Which, when you sat through, because you have a company that helps you to oversee and kind of look at stuff and run your business, you initially were like, oh, so we didn't grow this year. And they were like, no. Like if your marketplace is down 45%, what you're doing is allowing you to stay.
Yeah.
I said the same thing to the team in attraction. So like the same byproduct ends up happening there. Where if you're staying instead of going backwards, that means that you're doing something right. Like you're being proactive, you're being very aggressive, you're pushing into the marketplace, constantly bringing people in to make up for any compression of people who no longer can be in the business and leave. So I think it's important. Number one, we're in a season of winter, clearly, very accurately based on data.
100%.
The second thing that came to the surface, and this is where we can get into like what's actually working. I thought this stat was very interesting and we can share it with the group. 20% of all transactions are new construction. That's very interesting. Why is that? Well, on average, they offer 5% concessions with people can buy down rates on. Yes? Which makes it more affordable. The other thing that was interesting, Jose, is that the median price for a new construction home is the same as a resale. So basically you have a newer product that's around the same price that offers better concessions. And that's why it's become 20%. So if you're going to look for an area to perhaps focus on that there are a large number of people that are, they're transacting in this winter or in this recession of transactions, that is a place to look. And I've had clients that have been doing new construction down here in South Florida and helping people purchase those types of properties with very good results. Yeah. And in that vein, Jose, what was also interesting is 12,000 people per day turn 35, which is the prime buying years. Do you know what the largest demographic is of people turning 35?
What?
Hispanics. In the next 10 years, they will be, in the next 10 years, they will be the largest demographic. So what they were saying is like, look, so that makes sense, right? Because we have growing agents all around the country, about 400 plus agents now, 15 states. And in states where there's large Hispanic populations, we're seeing those agents doing very well. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, look, you don't have to go out and learn Spanish, but it would definitely make sense to have somebody on your team that does. And that could inform your media and your marketing, right? So having that person on your team starting to create content that is focused to that community in Spanish to help educate them on the process. And I think that's part of the reason why it's one of the veins, because you haven't really tapped into, at least I don't think so. Like the new construction thing is not something you've been focused on, but the Hispanic community for sure Like, what percentage of your business would you say is like Spanish
It's
speaking?
actually small because I mainly represent sellers.
Mm.
And because I represent so many sellers, a lot of the Latino or Hispanic people, because it's such a challenge for them to buy a property, they tend to be probably the most emotionally attached to the dream of home ownership. So a lot of them will hold on to their properties for 10, 20, 30 years.
Oh, they don't sell; they keep them in the family. Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
times they'll keep it in the family and they won't sell. It's very rare that they'll sell. But on the purchase side, there's a lot of purchase transactions in our market. And in our market, it's funny because in the last 60 days, there's a program now that came out and that's been out. It's called an I-10 program where people can actually buy qualify for a property with a tax identification number, meaning a lot of them don't have legal residency, yet they're able to get a loan to buy a house now. There's a program like that in our market. And two of the listings that I've had have actually recently sold on that sort of program. The rate is a little bit higher and the down payment's a lot higher. But this is what I wanted to focus on today's call: how to generate listing leads, but in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah. So, and in that vein, right, is what's working in this. My intention in sharing kind of was first to give a frame as to which to hear the message that me and Jose are about to share. So the frame is we're in winter, the worst blizzard in like 15 years. We're in a real estate transaction recession, less real estate transactions than in 2008. So in that environment, where do you go to find listings? And what me and Jose both firmly believe is part of what's keeping you stuck is your limited thinking with regards to where to look for listings. So the kind of common knowledge in our industry is what I would call the four horsemen, which are expired, cancels, for sale by owners, just listed, just sold. And it's not that those aren't great sources. They're just, perhaps sources that are what we would call red oceans. There's lots of sharks in the water, lots of blood in the water. The question is what's working? Now, I figured out why cash offers are working the way that they are. So while I'm there, there's a gentleman who does a lot of cash offer transactions, about 20 to 40 a month. Okay. And Leo was sharing that we have record levels of debt on car loans, on credit cards, and student loans. Records on all three. So, who the distressed seller is? Remember, there were distressed sellers in 2008, which are people who had bought properties and with the assumption that it was always going to go up with adjustable rate mortgages, marketplace shifted and they got stuck. Those were distressed sellers. Do you know who the distressed sellers are now, Jose? People that can't pay their bills. They can't keep up with the inflation. They
Inflation.
can't keep up with their record credit card debt and their record car debt and their record student debt. So that is why we've known for the last year and a half that cash offers is working awesome. But then it clicked for me. I was like, oh, that's why it's doing so well, because they're the distressed seller of 2008. So something that's working fantastically well is the hook being like, we will give you a cash offer for your property. And there's different mechanisms for kind of deploying that hook. So maybe you can talk a little bit, Jose, about PPC, PPL, like about perhaps mailers, because I know you're starting to experiment with that.
Well, here's what I wanted to jump in before we start talking about listing leads. We got to change the name from listing leads. We got to change it to finding motivated sellers, because that's really
Mm.
what we're after. It's not like, hey, how do I find listings? Is how do I find motivated sellers? The other thing that you have to change is, instead of saying, hey, listing appointments, you're going on seller presentations now, because these seller presentations, some people may want a cash offer. You got to be prepared for that. Some people may want to list the property on the open market. You got to be prepared for that. So you have to have different options at these seller presentations. They're not just like, hey, look, like, I only am going in there with a listing mindset. I'm going in there looking to identify needs and then presenting whatever the best solution to those needs are. Now, I wanted to make it really simple for people to think about lead generation. And I wanted to quote Alex Hermosi, who basically broke it down to 4 different ways to generate leads. And this applies to real estate as well, too. And I'll break it down that way. But before I do that, Aaron talked about how 20% of all transactions are new construction. What if I told you guys that new construction is actually one of the 4 ways that you can generate seller leads? So let me explain it to you. So Alex Hermosi talks about the first way is warm people. That's a way to generate leads. And there's a really good book. I forgot what it's called. What's that one Alex Hermosi book? Lead magnets or 100 million leads?
Well,
100
$100
million
million
leads.
offers.
The leads one.
Well, there's two,
He,
like, right? $100 million leads. Yeah,
He's got the
something like that.
leads one, and this one basically teaches you how to generate leads. The first way he says is warm. What's the equivalent of that in real estate? That's your sphere of influence. The second way that he says is cold. What's the equivalent of that in our business? Outbound prospecting and public data, like getting really good at understanding public data. Third way of generating leads is social. And fourth way of generating leads is a paid advertisement, which in paid advertisement falls the pay per clicks, pay per leads, and all that. So in the second one, in the cold, so this is what I got really good at. And this is how I started my real estate career. What I got really good at is pulling different lists from different places to make outbound prospecting calls to them. So, for example, different lists that you can call are probate, obituaries, tax liens, bankruptcies, different things. But if 20% of the transactions are new construction, what if I told you that you can go on your city's website and look at all the new construction permits and then start targeting certain builders? Now, there's going to be builders that already had their in-house real estate agents, but there are builders that don't have their in-house real estate agents and are looking to hire a real estate agent or a real estate company to handle the entire development for them. So in our market, there was a development right by one of my offices, and one agent got 80 listings. And guess what? That was available had I basically looked up that development when the permit got filed. So what you can do is you can say new construction permits, X city, and then basically you can go through who's filing for a new construction permit, what type of development they're planning on building, and it'll tell you who is filing for that development. So if you want to target new construction, that would be your outbound list. If you're like, hey, I want to focus on new construction, you pull that list, you basically start reaching out to the players in the new development field. You find out who are the players that don't have in-house real estate agents, and then you start reaching out to them, and then basically like coming up with some sort of value proposition that would be attractive to them.
And I love that idea, dude. That makes so much sense. And what I want everybody to realize who's on the stream or who will watch it afterwards is these are data-driven decisions. They are not decisions because somebody told you or because like you think it. You allow the data to tell you where I should be fishing, right? And along those lines, because I've known about the new construction thing for a little bit because it logically made sense. Now we just have more data to support it because it was the only way that it was like really affordable for people to buy a house. Because if you're getting on average 5% concessions, you can buy down the rate doing that and end up with a rate that's much less than what the prevailing rate is at the moment. So what we did for a coaching client of ours here in Miami, Jose, is I said to him like, hey, because he does work with buyers, and I said, hey, why don't you send a blast email out to your whole database and be like, hey, I am doing a webinar on how to buy a new construction home. You have a lender on the call and perhaps like, a representative from Lennar or whoever it is that builds a lot of homes down there. And then you do a presentation, you're in the room. And then what you do at the end of the presentation is like, hey, if you want to have a confidential conversation about, perhaps, us working together and helping you to get into a new construction home, use the link, which goes to a Calendly link to book a call. Jose, he blasts out his database. He had 40 people show up. One of them immediately bought a house. He showed me a picture yesterday, how it just closed. He made $25,000 from doing one webinar. So these are data-driven decisions, 20% of all transactions. And we just gave you 2 ways to get 2 sides, right? A seller and a buyer. So that's one thing that makes a lot of sense. The second thing that we're seeing makes a lot of sense, and perhaps, Jose, you can talk about this, is, again, this would fit into the category of perhaps, cold. outbound, and perhaps a little bit of social, because some of these platforms use, they're online to find these individuals, which are people that raise their hand because they want a cash offer. Now, why is this so important? Kind of logically, I want everybody to think about this. Well, if we are in a real estate transaction recession, meaning that we have the lowest amount of transactions since we've had in 2008, and it's lower than 2008, right? That the only people that are going to want to put their homes on the market have to. They're experiencing life events, right? Death, divorce, job relocation, moving to assisted living facilities. One of those life events, though, which was revealed in the data, because we have the highest levels of credit card debt, car loan debt, and student loan debt, is that people just can't pay their bills. And we've had lots of inflation, probably 20% in the last 5 years since 2020. So by utilizing these platforms that can find people to raise their hand that are in some sort of distress and need a cash offer, or if you initiate that with paid, which would be sending mailers directly to them with a little check that says hey, I'll give you this money if you want to sell your home. That's a huge lead magnet. And from that lead magnet, now I can ask questions to determine, hey, is this a retail thing where I can list it? Or is this another opportunity, whether it be wholesale, flipping, or something of that nature? And you've been doing this, Jose. So if you could speak about kind of how you've been doing it and the results that you've been getting from it.
Say it again. It's funny. I was looking up the permit thing.
Yeah.
And
hey, that's a nice way to say he wasn't paying attention to anything I said.
No, but look, check this out, guys. And this is what I'm talking about. In different cities will have this. So look, these are different type of permits that are happening in the city of Oxnard right now. It gives you the address, it gives you the status, it gives you the contractor's name, and then what type of permit they're requesting as well too. But then, and I haven't played around with this. There was a time where we were looking into this. You can very likely sort by what type of permit they're looking for, and then basically create different lists that you want to target, basically. So dwelling repair, solar panels. It looks like solar panels are very common. But this is where you can find building permits. Like if somebody's looking to build a development of 20 or 100 homes, of 100 homes, this is where you would find it. So you can find these records. And now you have ways of obviously targeting buyers, but you also have ways of targeting the builders. So if you wanted to build the niche around this, you can start pulling these permits and start seeing who the players are. But your question was, Aaron, when I was distracted, what was it?
The question is we know that the cash offers are working. Now we have data to support why it's working. But if you can explain a little bit about what you've been doing with PPL, PPC, and maybe if I remember correctly, because I shared with you the guy I spoke to is, with mailings and how that's working for him. Because basically all you're doing, it's cold. If you go down that list of leads, you said warm, which is PCCOI, cold is outbound, and there's social and paid. It's a combination of actually it's really paid. Because
PPC, PPL. So
yeah. All right.
So if you break it down, and I think it's important for you guys to whenever Alex broke it down into those 4 categories, it makes it really simple to understand. So the one that Aaron is talking about is PPC and PPL, which basically what pay per lead is there are lead providers, just like Zillow is a lead provider. There are lead providers that will advertise online to people that, like if you Google, I need to sell my house for cash, one of their websites will pop up. Once somebody registers as a lead, they will sell you that lead, basically. That's called pay per lead. And that's how they're generating their leads, but they're generating motivated seller leads that are requesting cash offers. Now, pay per click is the same exact thing. The only thing is that you're the one managing the campaign, and it's your website that's being used to generate these leads. Where we started off with the pay per lead, where there's providers like Need to Sell Your House Fast, Lead Geeks, Motivated Leads, Fast Home Offers, I think I already said motivated leads. And you basically register, and you can basically turn it off and turn it off whenever you want. And it's on a bidding system where you get to bid a certain amount per lead, and it's open to other investors as well too. And then what ends up happening is you end up receiving a name, an address, and a phone number and an email of somebody that's requesting a cash offer. And then it's up to you to be able to determine what their needs are, and if it's a better listing lead or a better um cash offer lead. And there is no right or wrong. It's not like, oh, like I prefer a cash offer or I prefer a listing. It's what are their needs and what suits them better. And depending on what
Yeah,
their needs are and what suits them better, that's what you offer them.
yeah, and I think a big barrier to entry here is just a mental barrier, where I think we've been so conditioned as real estate agents that we only have one real solution to their problem, which is that we list the property, we put it on the market, and we sell it.
No.
When in fact, if we reframe the way we think about a real estate agent, and we call them, I know you like the term real estate professional, right? Where there's lots of different options at the disposal. And the hook of we can make you a cash offer brings them in the door, because the question you have to ask yourself is like, what's an easier sell? Give me money, or I am going to give you money. It's much easier. I'm going to give you money, for you to respond to that. And that just gets them in the door. Once they're in the door, and we already shot a video, you can go check it out. I think it's under like Aaron Novello Offers on YouTube, where me and Jose walk through that conversation, which essentially is pre-qualifying to find out, hey, is this person actually interested in a cash offer, or do they just want a retail price, but they want a cash offer, right?
Yeah.
And what was super interesting, Jose, with that guy that I spoke to that does like 30 to 40 sides a month that are where he purchases them, and either all different exits, wholesale, hotel, like, whatever, like all different exits. 7% of all of the leads that are generated from these sources ends up being listings. The rest, he has other options for, like other exits for, right? I found that to be super interesting, because the listing actually becomes the last option, right? The preference is to purchase, the preference is to wholesale, the preference is to do one of those things. And the last option is like, okay, well, it sounds like what you really want is retail. The best way to do that is to have it on the open market. And what I would suggest at this moment is, if you have an agent that you know, like, and trust, you should call them. Tell them that you want to put the home on the market. What's also true, I have my real estate license. I've been selling real estate in this geographic area for the last, 15, 17, 5, 10, however many years. And we do X amount of business on a yearly basis. So I can help you in that capacity if you're open to working together that way. Is that something you would be open to? And then be quiet. And then, if they say sure, then you go list the property. So I think part of this is reframing the way we think about a listing appointment. And instead it should be a like real estate
Seller's presentation, seller consultation.
Yeah. Like a real estate consultation, right?
Seller's
About,
consultation.
hey, yeah, here's the options that you have at your disposal, right? And anyone you're okay with. But again, the data is showing us why this is such a good lead source, because we have record numbers of credit card debt, we have record numbers of car debt, and record numbers of student loan debt. So the distressed seller, if we are in an economic winter for transactions, which we are, it's the lowest amount of transactions in the last 15 years. It's worse than 2008. The distressed seller then was people who were over leveraged with adjustable rate mortgages. The distressed seller today is somebody who's just having a hard time paying their bills, man. And I don't foresee there being any relief there in a major way in terms of, inflation and all that other stuff. So I believe that this source will continue to be a good source for the foreseeable future, 18, 24 months, something like that.
I also think that too, like, because I did a call for your audience on Wednesday, or our audience for elite builders. And
Yeah.
I could
How'd
tell
that go, Mike?
it went excellent. But I could tell when I was letting them know how I'm doing PPL, people wanted to go out and figure it out and do it themselves instead of just hiring one of the companies to actually do it.
And what do you think's underneath that? Why do you think they're doing
I
that?
think they're probably thinking like they could save money or generate
Yes.
lower. And it was funny because I had a guy that said, "Oh, I'm actually doing something similar, but I'm doing with this company, and I'm paying, instead of $200 per lead, I'm paying $20 per lead. And I asked him and I said, okay, how many of you converted? And it was none. And what I
Yeah.
told him, I was like, is there a chance that the lead, because it's less expensive, could be lower quality? And then I asked,
What'd he say?
uh,
Did he acknowledge
he,
it? Did he accept it, or was he like,
he
no?
acknowledged it, but then I asked them a question. I said, okay, if you guys can get 100 leads and convert one, and those 100 leads cost you $2,600, and you had the option of getting one lead that costs you $2,600, and that one lead you can convert it, what would you rather have?
Hmm. That's a simple question. I'd rather have the one that converts, bro. That's all I
The
care
one.
about.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point of the other 99, even though the cost per lead was only like $26 or whatever. If you have to sift through 100 of them, it takes so much time to sift through the leads to find that one that it's more likely to get lost versus if you just get that one. So the real thing is not how much does it cost, is what is the return on investment? Meaning, like,
That's
if
right.
I'm investing $10,000, am I getting 10,000 back? Am I getting 20? Am I getting 30? Am I getting 40, 50, 60?
And to that point, let me ask you, because you've been doing this consistently and getting meaningful amounts of results, is for every dollar spent
It
for
falls
you
between 5
personally.
and 8. I would probably say 5
So,
and 8. Yeah. 5 to
so
8x.
for every dollar, you're getting $5 to $8
Yeah,
back.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And I'm also imagining that the breakdown there is some of them turn into listings, but also some turn into other opportunities. And it's really the other opportunities that make that 5 to 8x happen, correct?
Well, I would say so, and I'm still learning that other side still. So I'm still like not completely like fully
You're not
dialed
being like
in.
as efficient as you could be
No,
with it,
I
right?
think because like I was going on some, it's funny. I went on an appointment last weekend, Aaron. It was a referral from a other property that we wholesaled, and they
Yeah.
referred him to me. He was in a state. He wanted to sell 3 properties, and I made him a
Mhm.
bundle offer of 2.2 million, counter me back at 2,250,000. We settled on 2,225,000. I'm doing the numbers. The assignment on that total $135,000 assignment between all 3 of the properties. It's
That's legit, bro.
insane. But to be
Yeah.
honest, like I was almost thinking like he was better off listing the properties. And when I get there, he's like, look, like he goes, I need to talk to my brother. Steps outside, talks to his brother, and then they're like, yeah, we want to move forward with it. And I just thought about like, okay, like there's probably more opportunities that I'm missing out on because I was offering a lot less. I was offering
Yeah.
like 75%.
And you think like, why would somebody ever want to do that? But to your point, if okay, I heard Myron say something, Myron Golden, that was interesting. Is like the offer you don't make is something that somebody can't say yes to.
Yeah.
So you actually have to make it to see. And then, they stepped out of the room and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And you're like, okay, that's cool if that's what you want to do. Right. So you're beginning to notice that even within this lead source,
Just
there's probably times where you've actually been the one to get in the way of an opportunity taking place because of thinking.
because
Yes.
of thinking 100%, and because of like like I don't think I was underwriting the properties the right way. So I've been getting more in touch with like the investment companies and the wholesalers, and asking them how they're coming up with their numbers basically. and
Mm,
and yeah, asking them how they're coming up with their numbers. So because I've been learning how they're coming up with the numbers, I'm able to make adjustments to the offers that I'm making to be more competitive, and still be able to monetize the lead basically. So I'm actually offering more for the properties, and I'm getting more stuff accepted basically. Even though
I love
on
that.
some of the margins it may be lower, but it's like, hey, look, it's super easy to do.
Yeah. So what ends up happening from a business perspective is it ends up being like a blended kind of rate. So that's what I'm saying when I'm referring to that these other projects that you're doing from these lead sources, because you are listing properties, and that might be like 2x or 3x, but these other ones are what make it 5 to 8x, right? Where you have an assignment fee of 130 grand. And so that's one source that we know for sure is working, and we have the data to back up why it's working. So PPL, which is pay per lead, PPC is pay per click. That's where you try to figure that out yourself. Jose's guidance would be is to find an operational partner that's doing it. It does cost money, but recognize that what you're looking for is a return. And I know we did something similar in the same vein, but a little different in terms of what we're focused on. But we spent $2,500 on leads this month on Meta that produced 3 sales of $4,000 each, and we added like 2,500 followers. So basically, we got paid to acquire attention, and that's wild, right? But that's a new thing. Yeah, I got Jose's attention. You see that? He's excited right now. So that's a new thing that we're figuring out. But what I told the group in a mastermind when we were talking about media is a quote that really stopped me, that made me reevaluate everything I was doing, which is that if you are a crappy salesperson, a crappy marketer, you have to become a rock star salesperson.
Well, that's what we became.
And that's what we became,
because
rock star
because
salespeople.
we were shitty marketers.
That's right. And now what we're becoming is rock star marketers, right? Now, when you can combine those two, it gets next level. Like you can make $1 million a year being a rock star salesperson. You can make 10 million, $100 million a year being a rock star marketer and salesperson. So that's one source. And then another source that's within the same vein is, just having like a superior tool. So we got a buddy of ours who's a brother from another mother. We call him the Mexican Megamind. And he created a dialer that allows people to get like 30 to 40 contacts an hour. Jose, at the rooftop kind of private event that we had at EXPCon for builders and elite builders and for any other guests, one of the guys who's going to partner with us, he's a young guy, he came up to me and he was like, bro, we got on the Enzo dialer and that has been a game changer. He's like, dude, I can do in an hour what it used to take me like a week to do. And I'm like, yeah, it's a distinct competitive advantage. It's a superior tool. So it just logically makes sense if we think about this, right? Again, if we put it in context, we are in a real estate transaction recession, the lowest amount of transactions that we've had since 2008, almost 45, sometimes 50% less units in geographic areas. It would logically make sense that in order for me to find the people that have to do something, I have to speak to more of them.
Yeah, 100%.
It just makes sense. So there are tools out there that can help you to get 6 to 7 contacts an hour. There is a tool that can help you to get 40 contacts an hour.
Yeah.
And everybody that I know that has jumped on it, and I just dropped it in the chat. If you don't have it, like check it out. Here it is right there. Everybody I know that has spoken to, and I know you've utilized it, and they have another option, which I think is really smart to pay attention to, and it's within the vein of cash offers, has nothing but fantastic things to say, where like it used to be, I remember using dialers and, you might wait for, I don't know, like a while in between calls, where on that platform, basically every 30 seconds you're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And that just radically increases the probability that you're going to find the people that have to do something.
Yeah. So when the market shifts, and not only that, but there's been a lot of different things that have contributed to the contacts per hour going down for a lot of people. Like the iPhone has different features where it says scam likely, like, hey, very likely a telemarketer calling you. So there's just phone numbers are getting flagged. So there's just a lot of different things. So that falls into the outbound section. So just remember, guys, whenever you're like business planning going into 2025, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do to lead generate? Be like, okay, what am I going to do in the warm field, if anything? What am I going to do in the cold field? Or how can I make the cold field better? Which the cold field might be just, hey, I'm going to get a new dialer that will alone improve the cold field. What am I going to do on social, if anything, to generate leads, to generate motivated seller leads? And what am I going to do in PPC or PPL or paid? Because the fourth category is paid. You're paying for the leads. What are you going to do with that? So I think when you break it down into like, hey, look, there's only 4 different ways to generate leads, and then you break down each one of them, you can improve the ones that you want to do, basically.
Yeah, and that makes me think about, I've heard somewhere else. So there's 4 ways to generate leads. There's also only 4 ways to grow a business.
Mm-hmm.
So the first way is what we're talking about, which is to increase
Yeah,
leads.
which is
So
one
if
of
you have
4
100
ways.
leads and yeah, if you have 100 leads and you sell a product for, let's say, $1,000, you sell 10 of them out of those 100 leads, you make $10,000. Well, if you increase the leads to 200
You
and
should
the
do
conversion
20.
stays the same, you should do 20, and you doubled your business, right? Now the challenge is to make sure that the arbitrage, the amount that it took or whatever you were doing to increase the leads to 100 is less than what you bring in, right? And then great, we're winning. Well, the second way to build a business is to increase conversion. So if you take that same product where if you're getting 200 leads, you're having 10% conversion, you get 10 sales, you're at 20,000. Well, if you increase conversion by 10% to 20, now you have 40 sales. Now that's 40 grand. You quadrupled your business just by adding leads and increasing conversion,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fourth way is ascension. You ascend them into something higher. So let's say you sell them something like a home for them to live in, but then you start to help them to build a portfolio. Let's go buy other properties. So I'm ascending them into higher things. And then the fourth way is retention. You just keep them longer as a client, so they continue to do business with you more and more. But to your point, if you can just focus on, look, there's only 4 types of leads, and there's only 4 ways to grow a business. And in a real estate recession of transactions, the thing we need to be focused on, in my opinion, are the first 2,
I agree.
leads and conversion.
I was going to say the
Right?
same exact thing. If you can focus on
Yeah.
those 2, that's basically a game changer. Like, okay, how do I generate motivated seller leads? And then how do I improve my conversion? So the reason I say I'm able to basically convert and get 5 to 8 return on my money is I would say that I'm a really good converter. So how do you get really good at converting your leads? You practice, you practice, you role play, you chant scripts. So if you get really good at generating the leads, now it's just the conversion part of it, basically.
And I want everybody to realize that informs all of our media. So there's a method to the madness. So this call right now is how to increase leads. But then you'll notice on our, things we do on Wednesdays, that's role play, which is about lead conversion.
Basically.
Yes, because that's what to say and how to say it. That's sales skills. So I believe for the next, I don't know, like 18 to 24 months, I want everybody on this call to recognize something. Okay. The last time we had this drop in volume in transactions, it took over a decade to get back to the high. So if we went from 6-7 million down to 3.8 million, the last time that happened, it took over 10 years to get back to the 6 to 7. So what am I saying to you? This is like a reality that we're going to have to deal with for an extended period of time. And your ability to not only assess reality and deal with it is directly correlated with getting the outcomes that you want.
So,
right?
Let me go through the 4 different things, and let me give you guys some different ways of generating listing leads or motivated seller leads. Okay. So the first one is warm, which is your sphere of influence. How do you generate through your sphere of influence? You reach out to them, you provide some sort of value, and you ask for a listing referral. Who do you know that's looking to sell their property? Now, what you can do in your sphere of influence, you can strategically add people that are more likely to refer you listing leads. So you can add attorneys, you can add CPAs, you can add contractors. Like I have a listing lead from one of my handymen right now that does handiwork. He's like, look, my client's fixing up their property to sell it. You could add hospice people. You could add senior homes. When people go into senior homes, a lot of times their clients are going to need to sell a property. You can add assisted living facilities. You can add, um, uh, those types of people would be
Notice of for default or foreclosures or lispendus or liens against the property. Like there's all these different sources that you can
So
add,
that would
right?
be the second way. The second way is outbound. Okay. Now, outbound, what list could you get? The list pendings, the bankruptcies, the new construction list, the probates, the obituaries, all of that. That's the second way. So you start getting different niche lists, absentee owners. Third way is okay, posting on social. If you want to attract motivated sellers, what type of content can you post on social to that motivated sellers would be attracted to? Okay, like you would very likely be posting content that is searchable on okay, what are the costs involved when selling a property? How do you get a cash offer when selling your property? Um, how do you interview agents for the job of selling your home? So you do different topics that sellers would be interested in learning about. Fourth way is the paid. Okay, that's the pay per click, pay per lead, or is there a certain provider that I can pay to basically generate motivated seller leads for me? Which
Yeah,
is
and without this comprehensive approach, guys, I need you to understand the image that I want you to put in your brain is imagine that we go fishing together and we're on, not my cup of tea. I probably wouldn't do that if you invited me, but let's imagine for a moment that that's what we're doing. And if we wanted to actually catch fish, right? Not just like, you know, mess around and drink beer or whatever, but like actually catch fish, what would we need? Well, we'd need bait and we would need fishing poles, right? And if we actually wanted to catch fish, how many lines would we put in the water? One? No. If you've ever been on one of those boats before on a fishing trip, how many lines do they put in the water? As many as they can, right? They might have 7, 8, 9, 10 lines in the water in hopes that something hits a fish, right? And I think the general information that's been just accepted and acknowledged in the real estate space from coaches and trainers who A, haven't sold real estate in a long time, or B, never sold real estate, is that there's just a handful of like sources and they all get bunched up into one,
and they're
which is like,
all
hey, I'm going to,
and they're all outbound. That's what most people think.
they're all outbound.
They're all
That's
outbound.
exactly right.
None of them, or
Yeah. And they're all,
little of them are inbound. And if they're inbound, they're like, oh, Zillow leads, and that's,
yeah.
or realtor.com leads, or Redfin leads, and that's it.
And that's it. And you're depending on these platforms, which increasingly are charging more money for those leads in terms of referral fees and stuff. So what we're saying to you is like, listen, guys, the future of real estate is that as an agent, you need to be independent of kind of those platforms for a couple of reasons. One is they can increasingly charge you more money, but two is that, and they're incredibly expensive. So like agents are perfectly fine spending $5,000 on one lead. Because the logic is, oh, well, it's coming out of money that I paid in commissions, not out of like my own pocket. Well, that's really silly because that's for that same $5,000, you could have bought, let's say, 10 seller leads and taken 2 listings, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever it is, right? Over time, we just don't want to outlay the money, right? And you want to be independent of those platforms. And also most of those platforms, what you mentioned, the Zillows, the Redfins, like all that, they just provide buyer leads, not so much seller leads.
That's the problem.
So what we're interested is
that's the main problem with them.
It's the main problem. And what I'm aware of is that it's not debatable that all the leverage is on the listing side. So we're operating from the premise that if the best place to stack time in the real estate game is on listing property in high volume, because what these platforms, all the ones that Jose just mentioned, what do they all need like oxygen to breathe? Without it, they all die.
Listing leads or listing sellers, basically.
Yeah, they need data, which is listings. So me and Jose are not dominant listing agents. We are prodigious providers of data, because if they could figure out how to get that data without you, they would. So if we think about this long term, right, as we have all of this disruption in our industry and all these changes, is as long as I can continue to be a prodigious provider of data, I will be disproportionately rewarded financially for my efforts, more than anything else in the space, because I'm providing what it needs. And check this out, Jose, listen to this number, okay? Leo revealed this in a mastermind. Up until June of this year, 76% of agents haven't sold one of their own listings. That means 24% of all the agents are listing all the property. And what was equally as interesting and wild is only 0.14% of all agents in the country did 30 deals a year or more. That's it. So what we're sharing with you is based on, like, between the two of us, almost 30 years of experience. What's worth stacking time on top of, which we would collectively say is listing property in high volume. And then also how to generate leads for that specific source of business. So remember, there's only two ways to build a business. One is to increase leads. The second is to increase conversion. What we're giving you right now on this call is where to get the leads from on the listing side and the various different places. We also do on other calls and on my channel, lots of content on how to actually convert, what to say and how to say it. And those two things combined will allow you to get into that category of 0.014% of agents that do 30 deals a year or more, and the vast majority being on the listing side. Because what Leo and Glenn told me, okay, with a very high degree of probability moving forward because of NAR and the lawsuits and the changes, they both said to me if they had to bet that there will be a compression on buy-side revenue. If they had to bet, they would bet it would go down. And I think that that's true. It's way more volatile because it's market-driven. If you have 16 offers on the property, one that's going to be chosen is one that has the best price, the best terms, and the best commission, truthfully.
Yeah.
Right?
And here's the last final thoughts that I will say. I am doing all four of them: warm, cold, social, and PPL, and I'm getting a little bit from all of them. And then the last thing I would say, whenever we say that all the leverage is on the listing side, I did a little top 10, who the top 10 agents in my marketplace are. 9 out of the top 10 agents, 50 to 60% of their business was listings based, meaning more than 50% of their business comes from the listing side because that's where all the leverage is at.
So all the leverage is at. So here's what we're saying to you guys, okay? Just to recap eloquently and clearly and concisely in the 2 minutes that we have left. Give yourself some grace and compassion, because if you've sold real estate this year and you have lasted, you've done it in a blizzard and in an economic transaction winter that's the worst since 2008, okay? We may not think about it that way, but that's what the data is showing us. Number two, moving forward, you have to be very clear and focused on these 4 different ways of generating leads and having a plan for all of them. Because if you want to do 100 deals a year like Jose's doing, you have to have multiple different sources with which to get those leads, particularly if you want to be on the listing side. The next thing that I would propose or suggest is that in this environment, when times are tough, only the super skilled get paid. So making sure you have mastered the conversations around listing property in high volume, that would be setting the appointment, pre-qualifying the appointment, actually going on the appointment, presenting, handling objections, and closing. And then the 6th one I would add to that is if for some reason it doesn't sell, getting a price reduction. Those conversations are conversations that you have to master inside and out. So that way you can get your unfair share of the business. And that's what we're after. That's what we want you guys to get. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be a guide and to help you guys. Our intention is to constantly be giving you tactical information, because most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. And, really just equipping you with what you need so you can get your unfair share, because that's what we're about here at the Elite Builders. So anything you want to add to that, Jose?
That's it.
That's it. You can't add much to that, baby. So listen, Elite Builders, coast to coast.